I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 1, Every time you open your eyes, there are debt collectors. Chapter 1, When you open your eyes, you will see debt collectors. Oh my God, you guys beat the queen to death. Look, there's a lot of blood on the back of his head. He's definitely not going to survive. These debt collectors are really cruel. They kill without blinking an eye. If you offend them, you will have to shed your skin even if you don't die. Shut up, everyone. It's natural to pay back debts. We have mortgage documents in our hands. Even if we sue the official, it will be useless. At most, it will be an accidental injury. Who asked her to stop us? Bai Yunxi closed her eyes and frowned. Her ears were filled with chaotic noises, cries, and shouts, which gave her a splitting headache, and she suddenly opened her eyes. The dazzling sunlight made her head dizzy again, and her eyesight turned black. The scene in front of her made her a little confused, and she couldn't figure out why she suddenly appeared here. Just as she was about to sit up, her eyes were spinning again, and some memories that did not belong to her entered her mind, like insects gnawing at her, a splitting headache, and a sense of nausea in her stomach. Mom, you're awake. It's great that you're okay, eh? Bai Yunxi lowered her hand covering her head and frowned. She dimly saw a thin young woman squatting in front of her. Her face was sallow and she looked sick. Help me up. After taking a breath, Bai Yunxi spoke directly and gave instructions. In his memory, this woman was Du Shi, the eldest daughter-in-law of the original owner. She had been ill because of a difficult childbirth and not taking good care of her. Absorbing the memory of the original owner, she just wanted to die again. A good quality woman, a non-marriage person, actually traveled through time, and even passed through the body of an old country woman, jumped 3 times in a row, and became a grandmother. Even though she is at the top of the food chain, how can she play with such a bad hand? Looking at the eldest sons waiting eagerly for her to make the decision, Bai Yunxi felt tired. She was forced to pay debts when she walked in. What evil had she done? Furthermore, these tall sons in front of them actually watched my mother being pushed and were helpless. It was really a waste of time. The original owner hit the ground on the back of his head and burped. Now that the lady is fine, isn't it time to get down to business? The person who spoke was a middle-aged man who was also the manager of the Ma family bank, named Zhao Li. This man was vicious and a popular person around Squire Ma, who was responsible for issuing usury loans. Bai Yunxi looked at Zhao Li's gloomy eyes, pinched his temples with one hand, and held his daughter-in-law's arm with the other, forcing himself to stand up and sit on the ground to negotiate with others. His momentum was a bit weaker. Second brother, bring me a chair for my mother. Didn't you see that my mother was unable to stand firmly? The second son of the Bai family finally recovered from his daze after hearing his mother's instructions. He was frightened by what happened just now. Hey! Zhao Li looked at Bai Yunxi's behavior, squinted his eyes, and snorted in his heart. I want to see what else this old woman can do. When he heard this sentence, Bai Yunxi was stunned. Who was talking? Old woman? Is it her? I was stunned for a moment when I heard an exclamation from the side. The back of the lady's head is still bleeding. Oh my God, why don't you call the doctor quickly? Looking along the sound, there was this person in Bai Yunxi's memory, Aunt Hua from the same village, who was looking at her in horror at the moment. Mom, how much blood can there be in your head? Can you still live after it dries out? Bai Yunxi was stunned, clearly not seeing Aunt Hua speak. Oh, my mother, why is the lady looking at me so fiercely? Weird and scary. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 2, She can read minds. Chapter 2, She has the ability to read minds. Bai Yunxi felt a little frightened. She was sure that Aunt Hua had not spoken. When an idea came to her mind, her eyes scanned the surrounding area and finally settled on the eldest daughter-in-law. Why don't those stupid sons of the Lady of Jiren not know how to hire a doctor? Is this family in trouble? One after another they die. Woo! Bodhisattva bless me, my mother-in-law must not die, must not die. Now, Bai Yunxi was finally sure that as long as she stared at someone, she could hear their inner thoughts. Bai Yunxi. Is this the legendary mind-reading skill? Travel benefits? Sitting on the chair, Bai Yunxi raised his hand and wiped the back of his head. Looking at the blood on his hand, he felt dizzy again. Not only did he scare his sons, but even the debt collector Zhao Li was stunned. They came here to collect the debt, not here. Deadly. Don't be surprised, Madame Juren. It is natural to repay debts. You can't deny the debt just because the Master Juren has passed away. Although we did not take the initiative, in desperation, accidental injury will inevitably occur. If Madame Juren stops us, will it be meaningless? Hearing Zhao Li's tone, Bai Yunxi glanced at him. Damn it, it was obviously the old witch who acted mischievously and got hurt because she wanted to default on the debt, but now I am being blamed for the loss. Bai Yunxi choked, what the fuck, you are an old witch, I am obviously only 36 years old, she is still in her prime years with charm. Du Shi, bandage this piece of cloth for me. Du Shi was still in shock. When she heard her mother-in-law's instructions, she immediately tore off a strip of cloth from her dress and hurriedly wrapped it around her head. Bai Yunxi. Is she in danger of asking for debt? Now is not the time to ignore these things, let's deal with the debt first. If you want to collect debts, just collect debts. What are you doing in such a vicious manner? You want to drive people away before finishing 3 sentences. You are bullying our orphans and widows. How polite is Squire Ma to my master on weekdays? Now that my master's body is still cold, you come to collect debts. You really have fulfilled that sentence. When people leave the tea, you will praise the high and disdain the low. Zhao Li glanced at the old woman in front of him in confusion. Except for the cloth strip on her head, which looked a little funny, she was still the same person just now. Why did her tone of voice change when she kowtowed? Zhao doesn't agree with what Mrs. Juren said. Mr. Juren borrowed a lot of money from the bank. My master was kind and didn't ask for interest. He only allowed you to use this house as a mortgage. It's a pity that God didn't fulfill people's wishes. Mr. Juren's official position is gone. When it was done, I was very angry, and my husband was also very sad, but one yard after another, the money must be paid back in the end. Old witch, if you want to blame, it's your man who is petty and petty. He has no money to be an official. He was defrauded of money, lost his life, and still owes you a lot of debt. It's all self-inflicted. Bai Yunxi stared at him and ground his back molars. In my memory, his dead old man did use the property deed of this yard to borrow 30 guan from Majia Bank. Adding the 20 guan he had accumulated over the years, it was exactly 50 guan. He gave it to his classmates to smoothen the relationship and hoped to arrange a position in advance. It's a pity that the old man was not kind to others, so the classmate took advantage of the money and used their money to find himself a county magistrate and went to work in the next county. After the old man found out, he passed away immediately. After waking up, he went to find someone to comment on it all night long. Unfortunately, he was kicked out without even meeting him. The old man couldn't bear the blow and couldn't afford to fall ill. He survived for a month and left. It was just over 7 days ago. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 3, Terrible Eldest Son. Chapter 3, The Terrible Eldest Son. The official job was not completed, the people were gone, and I still owed a lot of debt. It was unlucky. As soon as the original owner accepted the matter of the dead man, the creditor came to the door and either paid back the money or used the yard in front of him to pay off the debt. Moreover, the other party still held the land deed that the old man had pressed down on the bank. The original owner did not want to mortgage his ancestral home and had no money to repay the debt. He fell to the ground while pushing and died suddenly. Bai Yunxi breathed out silently, raising 2 people for the sake of their children and grandchildren, which can be regarded as devoting their whole life. Although the situation in the Majia Bank was ugly, it was only natural that 1 yard should be repaid and debts should be repaid. In order to treat Lao Juren's illness, the original owner sold 5 acres of farmland at home, but he did not get back Lao Juren's life. Now creditors are coming, and they really cannot pay back. Looking at the 3 green brick houses behind me, there are 3 wing rooms connected to the left and right sides, the kitchen and utility room in the corner, connected to the main gate building, and it is in the center of the village. The location is excellent. The courtyard in front of me, it's more elegant than the ones in the Li Jing family. According to the market value, it is easy to sell 40 pieces. Madam, you have to give me a pleasant word today. You should repay the money or use the house to pay off the debt. If you are not willing, then we will go to the official to argue with you. Old witch, I will scare you to death when you meet the official. Zhao Li stared at Bai Yunqi, with contempt flashing in his eyes. In the past, they had to be polite for the sake of Master Jiren, but now that Master Jiren is dead, he is left with a widow and a bunch of useless sons. In addition to being obedient, they also how can it be done? As soon as everyone heard about the official, they immediately took a few steps back. The people were afraid of seeing the official because they were humble in their bones. Bai Yunqi stared at Zhao Li and gritted his teeth again. You are only a widow, and your whole family is a widow. I reiterate that 36 is a good year. The master of my family has indeed borrowed 30 gu from the bank. Now that he has just passed his 7th birthday, you are coming to collect debts. You treat the old friendship like dirt. I have nothing to say. Forget it, the world is getting worse and people are leaving. Give me 3 days and we will clear the land. After 3 days, you can come and take possession of the house. Mother, you can't. You don't have a house and a whole family is sleeping on the street. Before the other party could finish speaking, Bai Yunqi looked over with a cold look, staring at the cheap eldest son in front of him. Well, you are the eldest son in the family. Do you have any solution to the debt? You bastard, I saw my head was bleeding and I didn't see any action from you. At this moment, I became anxious and forced my mother to use foul language. Seeing that all eyes were on him, Bai Anshan's face turned red and he spoke sarcastically. The family has been hit hard one after another, and my son is at the end of his rope. It is said that debts disappear after death. I thought that after my mother died and my parents passed away, he was the eldest son and would definitely stay in the ancestral home. Unexpectedly, my mother woke up and wanted to make room for others. It was really unlucky. Hearing the eldest son's voice, Bai Yunqi was shocked. She kept staring at him, thinking that she was hallucinating. The son really has no choice. In order to treat his father's illness, the son can't even turn over 2 coins. The sage said, if a woman obeys her father at home, her husband when married, and her son after her husband's death, and her mother uses the house to pay off debts, as the eldest son, he can object. Listening to his inner voice, Bai Yunqi just looked at him quietly. The eldest son of the original owner was really nothing. In order to pay off the debt, he actually wanted me to die. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 4, Raised a White-Eyed Wolf. Chapter 4, Raising a White-Eyed Wolf. But he forgot that there is another saying that the father's debt must be paid by the son. The original owner was really a white-eyed wolf. In my memory, he was still an old boy. However, his wish did come true. The original owner was indeed dead, and she didn't know how she became the substitute. But she can't afford such a white-eyed wolf. Boss, if you have any better suggestions, just say it. If not, just shut up. Bai Anshan. This is the ancestral home. If it were defeated in the hands of my mother and went underground, I would not be able to explain it to my father's generation. Bai Yunqi clutched her chest. This matter had to be cut quickly. When she got angry, her vision would turn black. Even if she was a substitute, she would have to deal with it if it continued. Just now, she wanted to die. Now that she heard Bai Anshan's thoughts, how could she let him have his wish? What kind of sweet dream can a person have when his debts are wiped out after his death? Manager Zhao, we will move out in 3 days and you will take over the house. Okay, for the sake of the deceased Jiren master, 3 days will be enough. As for the ugly words, you can take away your personal belongings, small pieces of furniture such as pots and pans, but the big ones must be left behind. Manager Zhao, when my master mortgaged this house, it did not include furniture and supplies. This house is a family property accumulated by 3 generations of our Bai family. You know how much it is worth. I asked you to take it for the sake of my family. The master has just passed his 7th birthday, and I didn't want to disturb his peace, so I pinched my nose and recognized him. If I sell the house at a low price, 40 guan is the market price, and someone is still interested in it for a low price of 35 guan. The other buyer will not take away the tables, chairs and benches we have used for decades, right? Zhao Li choked. You old witch, you are really cunning. Ahem, let's not talk too much. The whole town knows that something happened to your family and that you are in debt to the bank. Anyone who wants to be involved in this trouble will have trouble with our master. Zhao Li raised his chin slightly, but his heart was not as calm as he showed. People are obsessed with money. This has been the case since ancient times. He is really afraid that someone will take advantage of him and cut him off, ruining the master's business. How can he reap the benefits? Old witch, if you dig a hole for him in the end, the black-hearted old thing might as well be beaten to death. Bai Yunxi stared at her and followed his inner voice to hit her directly. I won't say whether it's troublesome or not, but it's really cheap. There are many rich gentlemen in the town, and Squire Ma is not the only one. As soon as Bai Yunxi said this, the crowd watching the excitement immediately bowed their heads and whispered. Zhao Li looked at it and his face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. Old witch, you really have no good intentions. Forget it, for the sake of the deceased master, Zhao will overstep his bounds and make the decision for my master. Only the yard will be collected, and the furniture and other things can be moved away. Thank you very much. Please be kind and let us meet each other in the future. In 3 days, you can just come and take possession of the house. Zhao Li nodded and gave her a fist. That's it, if there is another farce in 3 days, we will have to go to court with Bo. With that said, he waved his hand at the people who brought him, and those thugs with cold eyebrows shook their arms and left angrily. Before leaving, they kicked over several benches and kicked down the door twice, showing their arrogance. After the debtor left, Bai Yunxi glanced at the busy neighbors and smiled politely. I won't invite you to tea because I have something to do at home. Please leave. Ahem, the autumn wind has started a new year, and I'm meeting my friends again. I'm happy. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 5, Transform Life System. Chapter 5, Transforming the Life System. We all live in the same village, and everyone knows the situation of the Bai family. It is a newly mourned family, and the excitement is gone. Naturally, no one wants to stay for a long time. Except for a few people with whom we usually have good relationships who would like to express a few words of comfort, the rest of the people came here to watch the fun. Listening to people's voices is a waste of energy, and Bai Yunxi doesn't bother to inquire. In the blink of an eye, they were the only family left in the yard, including the eldest son and 2 sons, the 3rd son was a daughter who was already married, and the 4th and 5th sons were twins. The whole family looked at her with big eyes and small eyes. Bai Yunxi resisted the urge to swear and glanced at the eldest son coldly. Boss, shouldn't you ask a doctor to bandage me? Are you waiting to collect my mother's body? Looking at my mother's unkind tone, Bai Anshan's expression changed, he knelt on the ground and spoke aggrievedly. Mother, all sons are unfilial, our family doesn't have a single copper. Don't say that the family doesn't have a penny and still owes the doctor 2 quid of money that has not been repaid. Very good, what do you mean, even if I die, you won't call a doctor for me? Bai Yunxi was furious, seeing him extremely disappointed. Fortunately, she was not the original owner, otherwise she would have been angry to death even if she was still alive. Lao Jiren worked hard to smoothen the relationship, just to pave the way for these sons to have the opportunity to go to school in the county, but unexpectedly he raised a pack of white-eyed wolves. Hearing the angry tone of the old lady, the sons cheered and knelt down. In this period, filial piety is more important than heaven, and they dare not bear the charge of being unfilial. Especially Bai Anshan, with a pale face, he took 2 steps forward on his knees and kowtowed twice with his forehead on the ground. Mom, please calm down. My son will have to call a doctor for you even if he is willing to show his face. After saying that, he staggered up, wiped his face, turned around and went out. Bai Yunxi looked at his back with a slightly cold expression. "Do sure, help me go into the house and lie down for a while. You also need to pack up quickly and move as soon as possible." A bunch of who didn't even want to bandage her wounds and wanted her to resist. "Do they owe you anything? Mom, do we have to move?" Bai Anyan, the second child, looked at Bai Yunxi with a bitter face. "If you don't move, will you have money to pay off your debt?" Bai Anyan blushed and shook his head. He didn't have a single coin on his body. "Don't talk nonsense to me. If you don't have money, just hold on. Go and clean up. Move out as soon as possible." Enduring the dizziness, Dusher helped her to lie down on the bed. "None of the sons cares about my mother's health. What's the use of such a son? When she gets well, he can take his household registration and run away. Danger warning, the host has the intention to escape, which is not in line with the personality." While Bai Yunxi was stunned, a virtual electronic version appeared in front of his eyes, with the words, "Transformation of Life System," written on it. What the hell? As soon as a question mark popped up in my mind, a text immediately appeared on the electronic screen to answer the question on the spot. "It's not a ghost, it's a virtual system space. Ms. Bai Yunxi is the first host selected by the system." Bai Yunxi. She was brought here by this broken system. Why me? When this idea came to my mind, another line of subtitles was displayed on the virtual electronic screen. "Because you match the aura of the original owner, and you died suddenly due to overwork in the original world." Bai Yunxi was confused. Is she dead? Why doesn't she feel anything? Also, what will happen to the pension money she worked so hard to earn? Will it be returned to work or become a zombie account? She hasn't had time to make a will yet. This time, no matter how much she complained, the system did not give her a reply. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 6, Live in a Shack Together. Chapter 6, Living in a Shack Together. "Let me go," the system defaulted, and she guessed correctly. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" Seeing my mother looking like she was about to cry, Bai Anyan was holding a bowl of water, her face turned pale with fright. "The father is gone, the house is going to be gone, and only a mother is left. God bless me, don't let anything happen to me." Bai Yunxi looked at him, listened to the second child's thoughts, and saw the worried look on his face, and finally felt a little comforted. At least this second child was different from the boss who was a white-eyed wolf, and he didn't expect her to die. It's a pity that the second son was not liked by the original owner. He felt that he was clumsy and tongue-tied, and could not do anything except farming, which was an embarrassment to the descendants of the Bai family. As everyone knows, the second son and his wife grew all the food they eat at home. I'm fine. Apart from this courtyard, I remember that we have 3 shacks at the west end of the village. This courtyard was used to pay off debts, so our family moved to the west end of the village temporarily. What? Our whole family is going to live in a shack? As soon as Bai Anshan and the doctor came in, he heard this and his eyes suddenly widened again. He stared at his mother leaning on the bed in disbelief. Is my mother crazy? Can people live in that kind of shack? If he lived in it, wouldn't he make the whole village laugh out loud? Bai Yunxi looked at him and sneered, "You are the eldest son in the family. What do you think we should do next? You bastard, sooner or later you will be sent to another place. System warning, warning, do not abandon any of your children." Bai Yunxi looked at the electronic screen and almost vomited blood in fear. What would such an unfilial son do? She was so angry that she had no inheritance. The host task is to transform the children to be united and improve, establish good values, and reward points. The boss, Bai Anshan, will be awarded 50 points for successful transformation. The second child, Bai Anyan, will be awarded 20 points if he successfully transforms. The third female Bai Jingjing will be awarded 10 points if she successfully transforms. Lao Si Bai Ani's successful transformation will reward him with 30 points. Lao Wu Bai Ansheng's successful transformation will reward 40 points. In addition, the host will be rewarded with 1 point for daily sign-in. Points can be redeemed for items in the virtual mall. Yunxi originally wanted to complain, but then he saw a statistical table suddenly appear on the virtual electronic screen. Host, Baiyun River. Task, transform the 5 children. Points, 1, items that can be redeemed, 0, lockers, 0, looking from top to bottom, among the 5 people, only Baiyunxin is the most difficult to reform. Baiyunxi is very curious, what will happen if Baiyunxin abandons the system? The host will be wiped out. Baiyunxi. What the hell, why let her transform a selfish waste? An old boy who has been taking the exam for 10 years. Baiyunxin's face turned red as his mother stared at him with disgust. What my son means is that there are also vacant houses in the village that we can rent for the time being. Heh, do you have money? You don't even have the money to pay for a doctor, but you can only rent a house. Baiyunxin choked and glanced at the doctor who was following behind him, with a look of embarrassment, mixed with shame and annoyance. He objected to calling a doctor just now, so my mother must have been annoyed. For a son who wants to kill his mother, Baiyunxi really doesn't want to give him a good face. Not to mention annoyed, he also disliked him very much. If the system hadn't allowed him to be abandoned, he would have been kicked out of the house today. Since you have no money, just settle down. As the eldest son, you have to lead the brothers to work together to tide over the difficulties. Yes. Baiyunxin lowered the look in his eyes and responded softly. If possible, he really doesn't want these brothers. They can't help him except being a hindrance. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 7, Is she an evil mother-in-law? Chapter 7 Is she an evil mother-in-law? Baiyunxi looked at his lowered head. As the eldest son, although it is not your responsibility to take care of your brothers, the respect between brothers and sisters will make the family harmonious. If brothers work together, they will be more powerful than gold. What the mother taught me was that it was the son who was useless and made the mother embarrassed. Baiyunxin blushed and apologized, turned around and cupped his hands to the doctor. Please bandage mother's wound first. The doctor nodded and looked at the lady in surprise. She was such a proud and arrogant person, but after a series of blows, she actually began to change. Opening the randomly bandaged cloth, looking at the blood stains on the back of his head, the doctor frowned. Is there any wine at home? The wound must be cleaned, otherwise it will be difficult to apply medicine. There's more, there's still half a jar left, I'll go get it right now. Seeing the blood on the back of her mother-in-law's head, Mrs. Du turned pale with fright. She quickly ran to the kitchen and picked up the remaining half jar of wine. It's still wine left over from doing nothing. Sister-in-law, please bear with me. The doctor cleaned the wound, sprinkled it with medicinal powder, bandaged it again, and put down another packet of medicinal powder. Change the dressing every 3 days, and be careful not to touch the water to prevent the wound from festering. Thank you, Dr. Yang, for the consultation fee. Before Baiyunxi finished speaking, the doctor waved his hand directly. No need, I picked the medicine myself in the mountains, no money is required. Even if he wanted to collect money, given the family's situation, he wouldn't be able to afford a single copper. After all the troubles, it was already noon after sending the doctor away. Du stood in front of the bed, rubbing her hands, and Nuonyo said, Mom, it's time to make lunch. Baiyunxi glanced at her, but before she could speak, she heard Du's inner voice. My mother-in-law was injured and must be in a bad mood. I don't know if she should be allowed to have lunch. Baiyunxi has a dark face, is she a mean and evil mother-in-law? Not even allowed to eat. The original owner did control the family's food, and rationed it at regular times every day, but because there were no separate households, the family had to eat, drink, and chew a lot of food. If they didn't plan well, they would end up hungry. Even if the original owner instigated it, the family's food was still stretched. Coupled with Lao Juren's continuous illness and the funeral, the family will soon be in trouble. Baiyunxi sighed silently and pointed to the rice vat in the corner. Carry the rice bag there to the kitchen, fill half a bowl of rice to make porridge, and cut 2 sweet potatoes. The cabbage grown in the backyard is ready to be eaten. I plucked 2 and stewed them with the sauerkraut. Li went to help. Du Shi put down the hand covering her stomach, quickly took out the cloth bag from the rice vat, and went to the kitchen like a storm, as if she was afraid that Bai Yunxi would regret it if she took her time. Looking at Du's back, Bai Yunxi's eyes twitched. Okay, she is just a mean mother-in-law. Second brother, you take the fourth and fifth children to the village to clean up the shacks. Repair what needs to be repaired and clean what needs to be cleaned. Okay, mother. In the blink of an eye, Bai Anshan, the boss, was the only one left in the room. Seeing that everyone was assigned work by their mother, but he was ignored, Bai Anshan felt a little uneasy, but when he thought about having to live in a shack in 3 days, he felt inexplicably angry. He is the eldest son and has the right to make decisions. My father is gone, and my eldest brother is like my father. Everyone should listen to him, including my mother. Bai Yunxi looked at his resentful voice and complained in her heart that such a bad son could only change things because he was broken from the root. He would only be able to change things for the better. Being constantly stared at by his mother, Bai Anshan went from angry to anxious. Thinking of today's changes, he felt inexplicably guilty. Extra, Chiu Feng new articles are still in the style of farming articles, with some added elements. It is stated that this book has no CP. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 8, I'll tolerate you one more time. Chapter 8, I'll tolerate you again. Mother, why does the mother look at her son like this? Bai Yunxi leaned on the pillow, looking at his cowardly look, feeling disgusted. Boss, your father has passed away. As the eldest son in the family, what are your plans for the future? Go back to mother. Our Song dynasty governs the world with filial piety. Mother is the old lady in the family, and the son is willing to listen to mother's arrangements. Bai Anshan thought for a moment, bowed, and spoke solemnly. Hearing the inconsistent tone, Bai Yunxi really wanted to kick him out. You are such an old lady, I will go to with you. Then are you filial? Bai Yunxi looked at him and said quietly. If your son is unfilial, should your mother punish you? Bai Anshan knelt on the ground with a plop. At this moment, he finally knew that his mother was still angry with him. It is difficult to raise a woman and a villain, but the sage will not deceive me. Bai Yunxi clenched his fists and ground his molars. I will bear with you one more time. Your father is gone, and I'm afraid the private school won't be able to continue. After paying off the debts of this courtyard, the family will only have 2 acres of dry farmland and 2 foreign debts from Dr. Yang. Life has to come, and the fields have always been cultivated by your second brother and his wife. Your wife is responsible for the laundry and cooking at home. From now on, the fourth and fifth brothers will also have to do what they can to support the family. Whatever you are suitable for, go back by yourself. Think about it, you can't fall behind these brothers no matter what, right? Yes, my son will go back and plan carefully. Bai Anshan was stunned. Thinking about this big family, he couldn't help but feel a headache. Seeing the cheap eldest son leave, Bai Yunxi finally couldn't help but roll her eyes at his back. She was cowardly and selfish. Even if she used her eldest son to suppress him, it would be hard to use after reforming him. Hands of bad cards will cause trouble no matter how you play. Looking at the furnishings in the room, the boxes and cabinets, and the simple dressing table, although they are not worth mentioning compared to those of ordinary large families, in ordinary people's homes, these are items that they would be reluctant to throw away after several lifetimes of use. The common people's family was having a hard time, and it was even more difficult to save some family property. The original owner's family, both his grandfather and father were famous scholars. Since there were too many children in the family, and they couldn't accommodate them even after they got married, my grandfather took the decision to divide the families among his sons. Each family subsidized money to build a house. In her generation, her parents only gave birth to a daughter. Even so, it took 3 generations to build this family fortune, so you can imagine the difficulty. Unexpectedly, it would all come to nothing in the blink of an eye. This is also the reason why the original owner wanted to protect the house with all his strength even though he knew it was unreasonable. Bai Yunxi sighed weakly, lying sideways on the bed, sorting out the memories in his mind. The village where the original owner lived was called Lieshuan. 180 families lived in this village, which was considered a medium-sized village. In her generation, the Bai family has only one daughter. As the only daughter in the family, she has been pampered since she was young, proud and domineering. The deceased Lao Juren was the adopted son of the Bai family and her son-in-law. Because Lao Juren was picked up by the father of the original owner. She still remembered that when she was very young, the original owner's father went out to meet friends. When he came back, he picked up a child covered in blood. After recovering from his injuries, he discovered that the child had lost his memory. At the suggestion of everyone, the original owner's father adopted the child as his adopted son and adopted him as his adopted son. The name is Bai Yunhui. From then on, the original owner had many adopted brothers. Bai Yunhui studied and learned literacy next to the old scholar, and won the imperial examination at the age of 15. The great future has not yet begun. Her adoptive father died of illness, and her adoptive mother was devastated. She could not afford to fall ill. Before she passed away, she entrusted her daughter to her adopted son. She watched the two get married before closing her eyes. End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 9, A Bad Hand. Chapter 9, A Bad Hand. At that time, the original owner was only 13 years old and had not yet reached the age of hair. When parents pass away, children observe filial piety for 3 years. During this period, Bai Yunhui took over the private school. 3 years later, Bai Yunhui started the scientific examination again, but failed repeatedly. As the children were born one after another, Bai Yunhui simply gave up the scientific examination, concentrated on teaching, and paid attention to his son. Over the years, the couple gave birth to a total of 4 sons and 1 daughter. In addition to the income from private school and land income, the old Juren could also receive 3 stones of rice every year, which was a subsidy given to the Juren by the court. Moreover, the old man cherishes his wife, and the original owner is almost the whole family. As the wife of a Juren, the original owner's life had always been worry-free. It wasn't until the old Juren saw her eldest son stalled after passing the imperial examination that he began to worry. He didn't want his sons to live in the countryside like him all their lives. After much thought, Lao Juren decided to become an official to pave a bright road for his son. The Song dynasty valued literature over martial arts, and gave special treatment to students. After passing the imperial examination, if you don't want to continue the scientific examination, you can wait for the court to send officials, but when they can be sent depends on your personal ability. Lao Juren told his former classmate and friend his thoughts, hoping that he could give him some advice. The man wholeheartedly agreed, saying that if he spent some money, he could ask someone to run it, and maybe his dream would come true. Lao Juren wanted to become an official earlier, so he thought about it for a while and agreed to his classmate's suggestion. It costs a lot of money to smoothen the relationship. In recent years, the original owner and his wife have raised 4 sons and 1 daughter, and the expenses are not small. Although they have some financial resources, they still lack some operational connections. The original owner discussed with Lao Juren and decided to use the old house as collateral to borrow some money from Majia Bank, which was a selfish loan sharking by the wealthy landlords. As long as the official career goes smoothly, these debts can be paid back quickly. Knowing the purpose of Lao Juren, Ma Xiangshan gave him a favor and only used his house as a mortgage without interest. Who would have thought that his classmate took the money to smoothen the relationship, but in the end he was given the position of county magistrate and turned around. Taken office. Lao Juren tried to fetch water in a bamboo basket but failed. In disbelief, he went to his former classmates to confirm the authenticity. In the end, he was driven away without even seeing anyone. Lao Juren was so enthusiastic that he vomited blood at that time and fell ill after he came back. The original owner sold his property to save his life, and managed to hold on for a month, but he still passed away. Today is the day when the banker comes to collect debts. The original owner has no money and is unwilling to hand over the land deed of the old house. In the midst of pushing and shoving, the original owner knocked on the bluestone bricks and reunited with Lao Juren. Bai Yunxi let out a breath, and the couple stretched out their legs and left, leaving her in a mess. Hands of bad cards, how should she play? It's hard to say whether a group of cheap sons with their own ulterior motives can be managed. Alas, what a bad luck, who did she provoke? When Mrs. Du came to deliver food to her, Bai Yunxi was still unwilling to accept the reality. "Mom, you lost so much blood, you need to eat more to make up for it." Bai Yunxi looked at the white porridge and half a bowl of stewed cabbage in front of him. Eating this little food was just enough to keep him from being hungry. It was better to replenish his blood. After being served by Du Shi and drinking porridge, Bai Yunxi waved his hand. "I'll take a nap while you go and do your work. I have reached the limit of not being able to sleep until now, and there are stars in front of my eyes. Hey, if anything happens, mother, just call me." Mrs. Du put away the dishes, glanced at her mother-in-law's head, turned around and went out. As soon as she reached the door, Ms. Li came to greet her. "Sister-in-law, how are you doing?" End of this chapter. I was called a poor widow, but I relied on my supernatural powers to fight back in ancient times. Chapter 10, She is really a grandma. Chapter 10, She is really a grandma. I finished the porridge and only took 2 bites of the vegetables. I said I was sleepy and wanted to sleep for a while. Du Shi looked back at the main room and spoke in a low voice. "Second brother and sister, do you think there is something different about my mother? What does sister-in-law mean?" Li's eyes moved away from the half bowl of stewed cabbage, with confusion on her face. "I can't really tell. I just feel like my mother is different after she hit her head." Du Shi shook her head and realized that Li Shi had been staring at the remaining half of the bowl of food that her mother had eaten. "The second brother and sister haven't had enough to eat? Hey, sister-in-law also knows that I have a big belly, a lot of junk, and I get hungry quickly." Mrs. Li chuckled, her face was naive, and she looked not as smart as Mrs. Du. Here you go." Since she married into the Bai family, she has never seen her mother-in-law eating leftovers. "Thank you, sister-in-law, you are the best to me." Li took the stewed cabbage and scooped it into her stomach 2 or 3 times. She had not eaten enough since her father-in-law's accident. "Sister-in-law, I'm going to wash the dishes. By the way, what did you just say about mother?" Looking at her devouring the food, Du Shi's mouth twitched. "It's nothing. If my second brother and sister are free, they can go to the village to help clean up. We have to move in 3 days. If we clean up neatly, we can live comfortably. The kitchen is her territory and cannot be easily invaded by others. Sister-in-law, do you think we are really going to move in 3 days?" Ms. Li looked at the blue brick house in front of her with reluctance. She was used to living in a big house and moved the shack suddenly. There was air leakage everywhere and mosquitoes and rats. "Aunt, it must be uncomfortable. Not to mention Mr. Li's unwillingness, who wants to live in a shack where it rains heavily outside and drizzles inside, making it damp and stuffy, and where there is a moldy smell on rainy days. There are many families living in shacks in their village. They are all too poor to open the pot. Their clothes are patched layer by layer, which makes them look pitiful." Thinking about how she would become that kind of woman in the future, she felt extremely rejected in her heart, but what could be done? She owed too much debt and couldn't afford to pay it back. The father-in-law is dead, how can they and their whole family survive? Well. When Bai Yunxi woke up, it was already dark. There was an oil lamp burning on the bedside table and a bowl next to it. After staring at the dim oil lamp for a while, Bai Yunxi sighed silently. As soon as he leaned on the bed board and leaned against the head of the bed, he found a furry head lying at the foot of the bed. A little girl stared at her with her big eyes blinking, looking like she wanted to get closer but was afraid. Bai Yunxi was stunned and raised her hand to pinch her eyebrows. This little girl is her eldest granddaughter Yaya. It was because of Du's giving birth to her that she spent 2 days and 2 nights, hurting her body, and her confinement period was not done well for 3.5 years. Still very sick. Du married at the age of 15 and gave birth to a child at the age of 16. The original owner also came through this, so she didn't think there was anything wrong with it. But in Bai Yunxi's view, a 16-year-old girl's bones are still developing and she is still a child. How could she not be in danger? I don't know whether it was because of the suffering, but Mrs. Du was very ordinary and even a little indifferent to the daughter she had worked so hard to give birth to. "Look, the little girl is only 3.5 years old. Her hair is thin and yellow, and she can't even tie her hair into a bun. Yaya, come here. I think she is already a grandma at the age of 36, what an old title. Grandma, you're awake, I'll tell mother. As she said that, the little girl ran away quickly. Grandma was bleeding today. She was lying on the window and saw it. After a while, Mrs. Du walked in quickly, looked at her mother-in-law who was leaning on the bedside, and flicked the wick. End of this chapter.